I'm out for my morning stroll. First day really where I've actually not been feeling massively anxious, which is a odd situation to be in really. So I've been cooped up for 2 weeks. My GP said to me that because, well, I was really worried about asthma 2 weeks ago and being particularly vulnerable, largely because I had a bad time with asthma a few years ago, and it sort of left me pretty sensitive to getting coughs and colds and things. So I thought, I'm going to be one of those people who's particularly at risk, which as a citizen is something I ought to be cautious about, because I feel a sense of duty to other people, and hiding in your house is you know, it's fine for me, but means that I'm reliant on other people to keep me safe, and that seems to have been so far in this crisis really important lesson. Anyway, so my GP has said, look, he said to me that 2 weeks ago that I ought to self-isolate, because he felt that at the time I described to him having a temperature and maybe, and I did have a cough, so he felt that there was possible symptoms of the virus. So he said I should self-isolate, but I took that as being, because of the asthma, I should self-isolate for 3 months, 12 weeks. And he's now said that that's not the case, so I can get out and exercise every day, which is fabulous. But I'm also a bit nervous. Anyway, I'm staying well clear. I live on the edge of a village, so I can walk on this quite relatively quiet path, which is a path that my dad used to walk up and down and play on when he was a little boy in the 1940s, a long time ago. So it's nice to sort of feel my feet on the path that my dad and probably my grandparents walked on. Anyway, this is all preamble, and I'm going to edit it. My role, I think, as we try to respond to this crisis, I have a contribution. I'd like to make a contribution in how we think about the crisis as global citizens, or as human beings resident on this planet at this time. And I've been doing some work over the last few years as a sort of idealist, but also a pragmatist. Ideally we ought to be global citizens, and we ought to, as people with feeling for fellow human beings, understand ourselves fully as residents of a planet, as well as members of sort of local communities. Oh, where's the path gone? So, I've done quite a bit of thinking about that, and now there's this enormous challenge of our situation seems to be framed differently right now. We have an opportunity to assess what's going on now, and our audit tells us about our identity and our communities and society and global cooperation, and we can look at it perhaps from the point of view of what's changed here. So I've been thinking about some of that stuff more from an environmentalist perspective in the last couple of years, and I'm hoping to incorporate what we can learn now and help other people to choose the right sorts of political solutions and political directions. But also, we can't do that without thinking about ourselves and our personal identities. What it means to be an object, an organism on this planet, in this space. So I'm going to organise some workshops online using the technologies that have come to the fore in this recent last few weeks, months, to try and help people with an interest in global justice and global perspectives and global political solutions to understand and share their perspective, because I don't think my perspective is particularly reliable, because we all have different backgrounds and histories that shape how we think. A key lesson needs to be reflecting on our personal perspectives. So I'm on my way back now. I just walk up to the bridge where the A52 crosses the road that goes past my house. One of the things I've noticed in this situation is that it's a moment where society and government, perhaps more government than society, get to reshape things, at least for the moment of the crisis. They get to change the rules. There are very obvious changes for some of them, because we're told where to go, what to do, and to stay away from others. So to actually withdraw from, in some senses, withdraw from normal social activities. And that means that government has power to shape who we are, what our political community is, but also that sort of shaping will lead into who we are next and what happens next and what's acceptable next. Further to that really unfortunately, the decisions that are made will affect who's alive and who's dead, who's included and who's excluded. So it's a moment that really makes a difference for all of us. There's a dimension that I'm particularly interested in, which is what this means for global government and politics and global society. We had been moving towards, or apparently moving towards, a stronger nation state and confirming a world order divided into different countries and different communities. And there are elements of that in what's happening now, as we see that as separate territorial communities, and it's really clear on an island like the UK where I live, that we have to come together in a shared society with a shared set of rules, or there's a really strong imperative to try and do that, to be fair to everybody and to keep things working and to keep us alive. So that really strong sort of apparently nationalist element to it. But there's also that element that we are to a certain extent dependent on what happens in other countries, and we're seeing differences in approach in different countries leading to different outcomes. So I've got this interest in the politics of the whole world, and therefore what we ought to demand from politics. If we're in a country that is less effective because of its decisions, its government's decisions and social behaviour, if it's less effective in saving our lives and sustaining our prosperity, ought we to be demanding that our community, our nation state, does something differently to meet the international standard. And also ought we to be aware of the possibility that we become free riders, that we behave in a way that doesn't actually meet the standard that we would expect of others. So there are lots of interesting questions. Somebody just rode towards me on the bike, and as they got near to me they coughed and then circled around me. They were miles away, but it just reminds me that little bit of anxiety that I have. But you know, it's a beautiful day, the sun's shining, the birds are incredible singing today. I wonder whether I'm just noticing it more, whether it's spring or I'd like to think that they are enjoying time without too many humans around. I can't imagine how that would make them sing more, but good on them if they are doing. One of the fundamental ideas in the sort of political theory that I've been looking at as I've tried to work out what's reasonable for global justice is this idea of methodological nationalism, which is really, some of it is like recognising overtly that we think of ourselves as citizens of particular countries before we think of ourselves potentially as citizens of a global community. But it's also that that idea then quite deeply frames how we think about politics and society and our habits and practices. So I've just been talking about the idea that, you know, our country or our community is compared to the behaviour of people or the experience of people in other communities. And that's a sort of habit of methodological nationalism. You know, it's an obvious thing that this virus doesn't pay any attention to borders. Neither does that bird singing in the tree. It's a habit of ours, from, you know, based on our history and possibly based on some really important logic about, you know, the occupation of territory and size of communities that are viable, or, you know, needing to organise a particular set of people rather than a whole. Although to me the whole is just another set. But you see it really at play in the politics of response to the emergency. So back home now, and I really enjoyed that walk. It's probably first time in maybe a month actually that I've been able to go out on my own like that, and I just feel like I enjoyed it. It was really lovely. So I was saying about this idea of methodological nationalism, and the sort of, you know, whether you're interested in that or not, I think what it sort of illustrates is the idea of bias. So I'd like to put these one or more workshops on and some people to join me to discuss some of this stuff. That at this moment, when we're reshaping the rules, or when governments and politicians are interpreting and reshaping them for us, based on their understanding of what's best for us, that we need to consider this idea of bias. I would argue that a bias towards our national community or our local community, and modern economy and modern identity probably has got in the way of us recognising the risk of something like pandemic and of enabling us to respond to it as effectively as we might. But there are all sorts of other biases that we might want to consider as we try to shape our political demands and shape our societies. So I'm hoping that if we can get together, a few of us, to consider where we're at now and what's happened, we can maybe reflect on some of the biases that we hold. And part of the point of getting several people together, ideally from different experiences, although albeit likely to be from my network, part of that point is to check each other's biases and to gently, prod each other to say how might we change. So I hope some people will join me. I'm looking for 5 volunteers, and we'll do sort of a 45 to 50 minute workshop discussion that I'll facilitate a little bit. That's what a workshop is. And we'll record it and share it, and hopefully help provoke some of the conversation that we need without jumping to conclusions too soon. Thanks for watching.